In this tutorial, we're looking at URL helpers in CodeIgniter. URL helpers are, well, it's a file that contains functions that assist in working with URLs. Let's take a look at the code, and we'll start off with the controller again, and I'll go to my URL helper function. And in this one, I'm loading in the HTML helper and the URL helper. Actually, what I'm going to do is, because I've found that I'm using this HTML helper in different places, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to delete it from all of the functions in this document, and delete it there and there and here, and it's not there. And I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to go to my config folder and then auto load, and I'm going to scroll down to the helper array, and here I'm going to pass in the HTML helper. So that's going to be auto load for me. I don't need to load it in my controllers anymore. We're creating our data array here, passing that in. Let's go over to the URL helper. The first function we're going to look at here is this site URL. So let's take a look at what that does. If we go over to CodeIgniter's documentation, it says returns your site URL as specified in your config file. The index.php file, or whatever you have set as your index page in your config file, will be added to the URL, as well as any URI segments you pass to the function. So let's first go over to our config file, and I'm on localhost right now, and you'll see that I don't have anything set for base URL, okay? And I also have nothing for the index page here. If I jump back to the browser, you can see right now for site URL function, I'm getting this, okay? Now if we go over here to the config under index page, if I pass in index.php here, how it is, this is how it is by default in CodeIgniter. I go back here and then I refresh, you can see that it's added index.php into all of these URLs. But because we've already done our mod rewrite and our htaccess file is configured correctly, we can remove this. And the pages are still going to load fine, so let's take that out there and save. And you notice here in the base URL there's nothing set, but it said it was getting it from here, and there's no site URL sort of array element here. So actually where this comes from is this config.php file, which is one of the core system files. So you don't need to look at this, but if you're curious to look at it to see how it gets that site URL, you can go under system and then core and then open up config.php, and we'll see here that if in the config file the base URL is set to an empty string, which we have here, first it basically does a check to see if you're using a regular domain name like whatever.com, and then it constructs that URI. And if not, it knows you're on a localhost, and it sets the base URL to localhost, and the site URL is created based off of this base URL right here. And I think you can find some code for that further down in here. So if you want to check that out, just go to config.php, and let's go back to our URL helper. So here I'm just echoing out the site URL, and we're getting, let's refresh here, and we're getting this, okay, which is our root web folder. And let's go back to the code. The next thing I'm doing is the site URL, and I'm passing in one parameter, and the parameter is these are the segments, okay? So maybe this is controller and then a function, and the first parameter of the function, this is a page on the site, and we're going to get this kind of output right here. In the next one, I create this variable segments, which is an array, has these 3 elements in it, and I'm echoing site URL and I'm passing an array. So we can also pass an array here, and it's going to do the same thing as what happened here, and it's going to give us a path like this. The next thing I'm doing is echoing the base URL, and we can see that we got this for the base URL, the same as the site URL. I didn't set anything in my, now there's 2 config.phps. I'm just going to close the system one now. And this config.php is of course the one in here in the application folder. I have nothing set for the base URL, but we saw how this was made earlier by them just knowing that we're not on a domain like whatever.com, so it's using localhost. That's how we're getting that. And same sort of thing here, base URL, we can pass it a parameter, which is the rest of the path. We can even put a file in there, and we're getting this. The next function is really useful. It's the current URL, and you can see it right here. So all you do is just put current URL and then parentheses, and it is going to echo whatever is the current URL. I've used this before for you can save this to a variable and you can send it to another page and find out the refer and stuff like that. So you might find some different ways to use this in your code. And the last one is we're creating a segments to array, and we're making that array as home HTML helper, and then we're right here right now, the URI string. So URI string function just like that, and what that is going to give us is let's take a look here, just right here. So whatever came after the base path, which is right there. Okay. And lastly, just like I said, segments to is set to an array, and we're passing that into this anchor function. This array is the first parameter, and the second thing is the anchor text of the link, and the last one is an attribute that I'm giving this anchor. And let's take a look at that, and that gave me this right here, this link. And the attributes are, if we looked at the source, you would see the attributes there. That's all I have for URL helpers, and see you in the next one.